I really wish y'all had warned me that Keyshawn Johnson was going to be on this segment, because I really don't want to say this in front of him because he'll bite my head off. But I'm going to say what I feel. I think Phillip Rivers should retire. I think it's time. I appreciate the career that he's had. The man has thrown for 59,000 yards. He's got 397 touchdowns. He's completed 64%, more than 64% of his passes in his career. He is no scrub by any stretch of the imagination. And obviously he warrants consideration for the Hall of Fame. Mad respect for him. But I think that what I've seen over the last 2 years from him, it's not so much the 20 interceptions that he just threw. I'm looking at immobility in a world where the athletes on the defensive side of the ball are so elite in this day and age that if you are a stationary target, I just don't have much faith in you. And Mike Williams can ball. I mean, Keenan Allen and these boys, they can get it done. Hunter Henry's going to be back. He's some expectations. Ingram can run out of the backfield. We get all of that. And still, you just saw too many afternoons where Phillip Rivers couldn't get it done. I'm not saying it's all his fault. We get it. But when we sit up here and we talk about Brady and the expectations that he could potentially end up a Charger even at the age of 42, what you are saying in essence is that everywhere else we have the requisite weapons to compete. That flagrantly at the quarterback position, there is something sorely lacking. And I think in the case of Phillip Rivers, that side arm that he throws with, even though he's tall and he can get away with it because he's tall and he can see over opposing defensive linemen, I just think about his throwing motion, his immobility, combined with the elite athletes on the defensive side of the ball and the way the game is evolving before our very eyes. And I just think that we've seen the best of Phillip Rivers. I'm not saying he can't play anymore, but I think we've seen the best of him, and whatever we've seen already, we're not going to see any better than what we've already seen.
Normally, I would say, retire at a certain point. In Phillip Rivers' case, I don't think he's a starter anymore, unless maybe the Bucs, maybe there are a few fits here and there where he could. I see him as a backup. But I would not suggest he retire. And I know what that sounds like. Oh, it's disrespectful. No, you could still win mess around. Nick Foles won a Super Bowl backing up Carson Wentz. And this is the reason I feel this way. I've always been a Phillip Rivers fan. There's so much to like there. The Iron Man, right? He's always there. He's played on a lot of excellent teams. It's not like he hasn't had chances. But, many times I've brought up in production meetings, like, what if Phillip Rivers is a topic? But we all agree that's not going to lead the show. People don't care enough about it. Ben Roethlisberger might. Eli Manning might. And they were drafted in the same draft class as Phillip Rivers. And he's just as good as those guys, right? It seems like he's just as good as those guys, but he never won the Super Bowl. And he had plenty of chances on really good teams, and he never came through. And in fact, it pains me to say, he came up small a lot of the time when they needed him most, even though he's a super tough guy and a leader. And I love the fact that he talks trash and he's put up big numbers and all that stuff. He hasn't won the Super Bowl. And it's for a franchise that people don't care about. I mean, the Chargers are like, they just don't have the same kind of fan base as, like, even in L.A. and Key, you know this. If you were to list how people care about different franchises, you get to a whole bunch of franchises and a whole bunch of sports before you get to the Chargers, including the Rams, including the Raiders are still more loved in L.A. than the Chargers. So all that conspired against Phillip Rivers. And the way I think about it, he's still good, veteran leadership, the whole thing, good enough to back someone up, good enough to help them in their development, and good enough where if anything happens and he's on a good team, I only think he should go to a good team. He's on a good team and anything happens to the starter, I would hate to see him end his career without a Super Bowl. I want to see him on a Super Bowl team. So in this rare case, I would say, I don't think he's a starter anymore for the most part. I don't want to see him retire without a Super Bowl ring.
Well, he's certainly a starter in the National Football League. And when you look at where these quarterbacks are headed, I know we're looking at Lamar Jackson and we're looking at Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. But, there are still a few statues that are in this league still playing. He's not a guy who can run around. There's no question about it. But when you look at teams like the Indianapolis Colts, Jacoby Brissett, you're looking at that division where Tennessee, Houston, Jacksonville, Indy was in the mix. The quarterback fell apart. The receivers, the offensive line is there to protect. When you talk about things that happen in San Diego, or L.A. Chargers, better yet, I keep calling them San Diego still. The offensive line, the tackles, the left and the right, terrible. Not good at all. The running game, by committee, was okay. The receivers dropped some balls at times. Phillip Rivers threw a lot of interceptions. There's no question about it. But when you talk about a team like the Indianapolis Colts, and you look at what they are capable of doing with Frank Wright, his former quarterback coach, co-offensive coordinator who helped game plan when he was with the Chargers, has a great relationship with Phillip Rivers. And you know, Max and Steven, these coaches around the league, they always like veteran players. I remember in 1998, we had a guy named Vinny Testaverde. Vinny Testaverde lit it up. He was, that one year, best quarterback in the league.
And he was a statue.
And everybody kept saying it was time for him to retire. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. What they do in Indianapolis is they retool the receiver position. You got T.Y. Hilton. You go out there, and one of my favorite receivers in this draft is a kid from Clemson, a kid from Clemson named T. Higgins. Mm-hmm. Remember that name. He's a lot like Keenan Allen, Vincent Jackson, Mike Williams from Clemson, guys that he has played with before. You give him that big target to go along at the 15th spot with T.Y. Hilton, you're talking about something.
Let me ask you this, Keyshawn. And by the way, I didn't mean Ingram. I meant Melvin Gordon. Obviously, he missed a few games, but I'm saying, they had him last year. But what I'm saying, I didn't mean Ingram. But here's the deal. You look at Keenan Allen, he can ball. Mike Williams only had 49 receptions, but still over 1,000 yards. He could ball. Hunter Henry did some things for them as well. Right now, when we look at the Chargers, we're not questioning their weapons. There's a reason the Chargers elected, in other words, and by the way, props to them for the video on Twitter that they put out paying tribute to Phillip Rivers because he deserves it with what he did for them. Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.